Good morning, and thanks for watching Data Lens. I'm here with Scott Barr, the president of Cairn Consulting Group. Scott has over 30 years of market research experience and over 21 years of experience specifically in the outdoor hospitality industry. And I'm here to pick his brain with questions that you have. So if there's anything that you're curious about, drop a comment in the comment section below. In today's video, we're covering common market research mistakes and how to avoid them. So with that, let's hop in. So, Scott, what are some common mistakes that people make in market research?
Oh, I could talk for hours on this topic, but let's stick to the basics. One is picking the right audience. This is one of the most critical factors that contributes to the success or lack of in terms of your research and your outcomes, and knowing how to interpret those results. For example, if you do a survey of just your customers from your customer list, then you have to understand that that's all those results represent. They do not represent a broader market. They represent the views and opinions and behaviors of your customers. Similarly, I know of people who do surveys via social media. For example, they'll have a Facebook page. In many cases, they'll have a very large Facebook following, and they'll post a survey and then treat those results as though they're representative, again, of a wider audience. They are not. They're representative of the pool of people that you dipped into. So the first is your audience. Decide who your audience is. Does it need to be a sample of people nationally, or is it that narrow band? Is it your customers only? That's great. Just make sure that you do that clearly and succinctly so that you know exactly. I would say the other common mistake is just doing confirmatory information gathering. And this links with the development of your lines of questioning. So typically one of the mistakes people make is they'll go out and do research just to confirm something they think. And well, that's not necessarily bad. It's a mistake though if you place too high of an expectation on it, and that is what happens if the results don't confirm what you think. So you could be setting yourself up. My take on it is ask questions that you don't know the answer to. Explore. You do exploratory research versus confirmatory. Confirmatory, I could talk about this for a long time, but if you know the answer already, then go with that. Use the research to answer new questions. And I would say if I was just going to do the top 3 mistakes people make, the third one is not having expert guidance. And it could be someone internally, it could be hiring someone externally. Make sure that you have someone who knows what they're doing, who knows how to frame questions, who knows how to scale those questions, who knows the order that you should ask, and as well as analyzing the results on the back end. In many cases, people will gather results and then not have someone who knows how to truly interpret those results, or to at least provide guidance. So again, experts. Look for the experts. Again, it could be someone internally, it could be someone on your staff that knows data, that knows outcomes, that knows how to do these things. If you don't, it's worth every penny to pay for some time from a consultant to help guide you, whether it's just paying for a couple hours on your questionnaire or on the analysis or how to interpret it. It is well worth your time and money. But I would say that those 3 are the most common mistakes that, again, those are somewhat upfront mistakes, and because the idea being that if you don't take care of those things up front, everything that you get from your research is going to be suspect.
No, that's great insight, and thank you for sharing. Kind of my big kind of follow-up question to that, is there any major pitfalls or anything that you should veer away from when it comes to primary research versus secondary research, or do you kind of see those mistakes and or pitfalls kind of clumping into both sides of it? Because I know that we kind of see them as a little bit different.
We do. With the secondary research, always consider the source. This is in whatever industry it is, there, if you are sourcing your information via the, say, an industry publication that cites a study someone did, it's okay to read those reports and it's okay to look at that information, but you should do so through the lens of how did they do this research? What were their methods? Again, to go back to item 1 I mentioned before in the mistakes people make, which is choosing the audience. I know for a fact that there are studies out there that use membership-based studies and publish that as though it's representative of the entire industry. And if you are a consumer of that research and say, oh, again, this is secondary, it's research someone else has done, you have to understand that if that's how they did the work, then it's only representative, again, of their customer base and not the broader industry as a whole. So, again, ask a lot of questions. The pitfall is that people, in many cases, trust the information that's out there a little bit too much. Ask questions. Again, ask an expert. Ask someone who knows. If someone publishes a study, call or email and ask the people who put the study out. If you can ask them some questions about how they did the work. I invite anyone to do that. And anyone who's been to one of my presentations knows that at the end of each presentation, I provide all my contact information and I invite people to ask me questions, because to me, it's a real important part of the process for people to stand behind it. And thus, when you do your own, which is your primary research, the difference being is now you control all those factors and you know what goes into it. So if a secondary source is one that you're not really that trusting of, or maybe they didn't ask the questions you really wanted, now you control it. So if you address the errors or issues I mentioned first in doing your own research, then you can have a lot more confidence in the results.
No, that was great insight as well. So my second question here is, how can you ensure your data is accurate and unbiased?
The bottom line, and that's a tricky question to answer. I'm not going to avoid it. I'll say straight up, you don't know 100% that it is. And that's just the way things are. You do everything you can to minimize potential error. You take care of what's your sample source? How did you draw your sample? How did you ask your questions? What are your conclusions? All those things. And you do the best you can. The best way to know is to use really solid methodology and then feel like you can stand behind your results. There's going to be error. It's survey, this is survey research. There's built-in error in everything we do. What you try to do is avoid systemic error, which is you did something wrong in your methodology, which invites error. If you avoid that, now what you have are results that you feel a lot better about. Because the bottom line is if you do it again, the research again, what do you get? Is it going to be similar? That's one of the things I look for, especially if you do repeated research. You look for things, what should change and what shouldn't. There's always a couple items that you look for in there that will give you some indications. It's like, if something changes, but you don't think it should have, well, then you should maybe start thinking about that a little bit more. Maybe you need to go out and finance just a mini study using one of the large organizations that do omnibus questions. I actually do this in some of our research where I do an incidence check. If incidence, which is how often something occurs within the population, we'll use camping as an example. Like how many people actually go camping in a year. And it's a big part of the work we do. So what we do is not only do we do our own research on that and have our own incidence rates, but we will cross-verify with one, sometimes two other sources, depending on how the results come out. Because we want to make sure that we are within margins of error in everything that we do. So doing that extra step, it's not a huge part of your budget. and can be well worth it. Again, if you're doing some population-based estimations, I would recommend having two sources of your incidents. And again, it will make you feel better about what you're doing. It'll make you feel better about the quality, and ultimately whomever you are doing the work for will feel a lot better about it too when you can tell them what I just said.
No, that's great. Thanks for the input. My big follow-up or question here was, has there been a situation, and can you explain or kind of dive into it, where you started off thinking that your methodology was ironclad and you kind of got into it and found that there was more of a systemic issue, and then how you pivoted to fix the study and survey results?
Sure. In some cases, what happens is you realize that how you screen your participants in your surveys may not have got you the population of people that you want. One of the things that I could go back several years on this was the idea, and I use camping again because it's such a familiar topic for us, is some people were doing research out there, and what they would do is they would simply say, have you gone camping in the last year? And what we realized was that was excluding a lot of people, because the way we as an industry define camping is much broader than what in some cases some people mention. As an example, the first time we ever did the camping report, one of the people from the media said that their view that camping was only in a tent. Like if you weren't in a tent, you weren't really camping. By contrast, there are RVers who say, well, we don't really camp, we RV. So what we do then in our adjustment to this was we felt that we need to define what camping is. What is it? If you use just that one word and say, did you do this in the last year? Okay, that's a systemic problem, because you are leaving it up to the respondent to define camping themselves and what their view is, what their bias is. So if you now tell them, and we did this based on research too, we have a definition of camping that we've been using now for 12 years that defines what camping is. So there is no question that when the person reads that screener and they read that question, they understand what that camping means based on who we want to include. And in our definition, we cast a much wider net, and we capture many of those people that would have been left out and were left out, because we did go back and look at some studies done by some other organizations, and their incidence of camping was much lower. And it was because they had this systemic screening involved in how they did their survey, that camping was just one word on the screen for someone to click a box on. And again, it seems like a really simple thing, but that alone impacts your results tremendously. And so that to me is the kind of thing that you have to pay attention to. It 100% determines the outcome of your research. And again, when you look at how people do things and you look at what your results are, if you have that as one of your first questions on your survey, everything else now that follows is suspect, and the conclusions you make from the research might be dubious at best.
Dubious at best. Yeah, that's a great word and a great way to put it. So cool. No, thanks for sharing that story. I mean, I think that provides a lot of insight into just like kind of how you take it and pivot. So appreciate that. Last question here. Why is professional guidance crucial for successful research? And if you had to boil it down to one major pitfall, how can people avoid it?
The idea of understanding that experts and expertise are important in this type of work. It's important in most types of work. If you want someone to build your house for you, you want someone who's an expert in construction and building and design. You're not going to hire someone who is a weekend handyman to build your house. And That person may be really good at what they do. They may be really good at repairing your deck or installing a door, but they probably aren't going to be really good at building the entire house from design, efficiencies that are built in, all those things. You want an expert. You want an expert to do the work for you. And that expert, again, it could be someone in your own company. That expert could exist. If you do not bring in expertise, you put at risk everything you do. And if what you do at the end of the day is questionable, now you've lost credibility. And once you lose credibility, you lose your audience. And thus, that's why it's important on a number of levels. But the bottom line is you need an expert to help guide you along the way, and don't oversimplify the work either. There's a lot that goes into it. Sometimes it sounds simple, especially when people like me start talking about it and we start executing the project, and it might seem like this is really easy. But what we have is all that experience and expertise that we bring to the table that allows us to be much more efficient. And again, it's the same thing in hiring a contractor to build your home. That the person who's really good at it, they're going to be much more efficient. They're going to make the job look easy. So again, those are the things to think about, and that's the importance of it. Again, always find an expert. And if you have to just buy a couple hours of someone's time, do it. It's worth every penny you can spend.
Awesome. So, like with anything, ask the expert and see where we can go from there. All right, and thanks for joining today, guys. If you like what you see, leave a comment and or subscribe below. And yeah, this is Scott and Justin with Data Lens. Have a good day.
Thank you.